Hello and welcome to this, my video on what I think Blizzard will do with Mage's card releases in Karazhan. So without further ado, let's do what we've done in previous videos and look back at the past just to see what Blizzard has been going for in terms of their design philosophy for Mage. And right all the way back to Blackrock Mountain, we can see that Blizzard have been trying to push for a while now a more mid-range style of Mage, a more board-focused Mage, if you will. This can be seen with the release of Flamewaker, which, as I think everyone who has played Ladder at all will know, is just an incredibly powerful card that synergizes so well with many other cards that have been released since Blackrock Mountain. So Flamewaker allows you to get multiple pings off of the card by playing many different spells, and essentially this allows you to further your board control whilst doing other effects, such as drawing cards, using Arcane Intellect, or freezing the opponent's face with Frostbolt, essentially allowing you to do many things at once, i.e. making tempo plays, hence the name of Tempo Mage. So this all started with Flamewaker. It moved the class away from the combo of freeze, kill your opponent with burn, store the board with freeze style of Mage that until this point had existed, and started the class down on a more board focused approach. We can see this continued even further in the Grand Tournament, where cards such as Spellslinger, Fallen Hero, and even Effigy aimed to continue with the Mage's focus on the board, as well as Arcane Blast, which was a burn spell that could only target minions, but which scaled unusually well with spell power. That was basically its thing. So we can see that in the Grand Tournament they continue to push this mid-range Mage idea, and this didn't get dropped in Whispers of the Old Gods at all, as in Whispers we were given Twilight Summoner, which was a really powerful 6-drop. If you don't know, it's a 5/5 that also summons a 3-cost minion. Now 3-cost minions are sort of often quite powerful. Relative to 1 and 2 drops, they're quite a jump in power. So if we look at Twilight Elder, the Cthulhu buffing card, that's a 3/4. If you get that off Twilight Summoner, you're probably quite happy. And there's always the chance that you'll get Injured Blademaster, which, if you didn't know, doesn't trigger with its battle cry of dealing 4 damage to itself, and so essentially you get a 5/5 and a 4/7 for 6 mana, which is a pretty good deal. And alongside Twilight Summoner, there's also Cult Sorcerer, which was a Cthulhu buffing card, but which was also very useful as just a solid 2-drop, further encouraging Mage players to play minions rather than all spells, or mostly all spells. And then you also had the less played Servant of Yogg-Saron, which similarly was a solid body with an interesting effect added to it. Looking back, you can see how Blizzard have tried to push Mage as more of a board-focused class, specifically a mid-range class with all the examples I've just given. But if we take a second look back, we can see other minions which often were played less than the more tempo-based minions, but which also pushed a different angle of board control, more of a controlling, slower board control. So in TGT we got Ronin, which was a very powerful card if you could get the game to be slow enough and survive long enough for its effect to go off. And then Ethereal Conjurer similarly allows you to draw outside of your deck, using the Discover mechanic to be flexible in many different situations, but which was obviously more of a control card as it had only 3 health, and so traded extremely poorly with smaller Zooey decks. And then of course other cards which were much less played than the previous 2, such as Animated Armor, clearly meant to slow the game down, as well as Anomalous, a legendary which essentially gave you another Flame Strike, an even more powerful Flame Strike. So clearly the theme for Blizzard when it comes to Mage is pushing board control, focusing more on the board and less on burning the opponent's face down. This philosophy shares with how they're approaching Hunter, as we discussed in the last video. So with this in mind, with Blizzard trying to direct Mage away from its Freeze Mage deck, which was its first viable deck pretty much, I'm going to predict that Mage gets some kind of slow spell, as with Flamewaker remaining in the rotation, they can't really afford to print any super cheap, super cost-effective spell, as Flamewaker would just continue to be even more absurd than it currently is, and it's already really good. So some kind of slow spell. I have no idea what thematic approach they'll use for this or what flavour they'll give it, as I didn't play WoW, but that's what I'm thinking. I don't know, something not quite as slow as Kabbalist's Tome, but something board-focused with a powerful effect that is late game. That would be really cool, as there aren't actually that many really heavy control spells in the game. And recently Blizzard have been trying to fix that. We can see this with their Call of the Wild for Hunter, which was just an 8-cost spell with a really powerful effect, as well as Anything Can Happen, and others, I'm sure. Just can't quite think of them off the top of my head. But on top of this heavy spell that I'm going to predict, I'm also going to predict some kind of mid-range minion with cool effect attached to it. Presumably some kind of spell-based effect that triggers whenever you cast a spell, or maybe empowers your next spell. So yeah, that's my predictions for Mage when it comes to Karazhan. Coming up in the next video, I will be predicting Paladin. So yeah, see you then.